Just ahead on a special edition of American Black Journal, we're going to take a look at Detroit post-election. Where do we go from here? We'll talk about how the city is doing today and what city leaders should focus on in 2018. Stay right there. You don't want to miss this very important conversation. American Black Journal on the road starts now.
American Black Journal on the road is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
This program is also made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson, and thanks for joining us for this special On the Road edition. We're coming to you from the Detroit Historical Museum in Midtown. Today's program is part of our One Detroit commitment to examine the city's most important issues. And now that the 2017 elections are over, we're going to take a closer look at where the city stands now and where it's headed. I'd like to welcome our audience members and, of course, invite viewers at home to comment on Facebook or on Twitter. Prior to the elections, we wanted to find out what Detroiters thought were the top issues in the city and what they thought officials should be doing to create a better city. Here's what they had to say.
Tell me what you need. Tell me now. Tell me what you need. Tell me.
They're building up downtown, which is good. They have to have the revenue coming into the city, which is very important, but you cannot neglect the neighborhoods.
Folks think that they have excuses, but no, we just need real resources.
I definitely believe that the city of Detroit could definitely do better with the housing. I mean, I know that that's just going to be like a huge process.
You pay your police officers like $15 an hour. You can't pay people $15 an hour and expect them to come out here and risk their lives to control this. To me, where it's like they're saying, they'll figure it out. They'll be all right.
Let's just get outside of Midtown and downtown. Let's get into the inner urban areas that really need the help.
Regional transit and 24-hour bus routes, we want to make sure that that's reliable. We want to make sure that their communities are being included in community development. We want to make sure that block clubs are being, asked about their opinions and what's happening in their neighborhood.
Keep up the spirit and keep it inclusive and keep moving forward.
Okay, the 8 incumbents on the ballot for Detroit City Council were all re-elected. Joining me now are 2 of them, Raquel Castaneda-Lopez, who represents District 6, and James Tate, who represents District 1. Thank you both for being here. So I want to start with just jumping off the tape there that we saw. How is Detroit doing from the perspective of your council seats and your districts? The progress that we're seeing downtown, midtown. Is it visiting in District 6? Is it visiting in District 1? I'll start with you, Councilwoman.
Sure. So actually, a lot of my district includes downtown and
right.
midtown.
You are the
so
downtown
yes.
Councilwoman, right?
But in contrast, I also have some of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the city, and one neighborhood in particular, which is the highest concentration of blight in the entire city. So definitely, as I go out door knocking, you can see the sharp contrast between downtown, midtown, and neighborhoods like the Midwest area, as well as Delray, as well as the Boynton Schaefer communities. And so I think the challenge that lies ahead is really balancing the needs and meeting communities where they're at, recognizing that some neighborhoods may not have any block clubs. So how do you work with those communities to kind of establish what I call that neighborhood infrastructure so that they're included in the conversations moving forward?
Yeah, James?
Yeah, well, when we look at downtown really exploded faster than any of us really anticipated. I mean, being on city council when we were going through bankruptcy. It's a totally different story. And so when you have billionaires and millionaires, and I say this all the time, when you have millionaires and billionaires who are looking to invest, they can turn things around really quickly with resources. And that's what we have in downtown.
Yeah.
So when you look at downtown, the city of Detroit, the government, we're not doing as much as people think we're doing. When you have Dan Gilbert, who purchased, I think, 98 buildings himself alone, that really, and he's not sitting on these buildings, he's actually doing things with them. So it makes it a lot easier, if you will, to see a change, a turnaround in downtown. When you start looking at what we have in our neighborhoods, when we start talking about the socioeconomic issues, a lot more difficult to change and turn around.
Yeah. So what happens in the next 4 years that makes that look different 4 years from now? Lots of the narrative around the elections this year was about this difference, this gap. Where do we go so that we're not doing that 4 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it really speaks to meeting each neighborhood where they're at and identifying there's no one blanket policy that's going to help us move forward as a city. And we can't just focus on kind of building the core and expect kind of trickle-down economics to then spread into the neighborhoods. It has to be going out, doing the grassroots organizing, meeting people where they're at, and helping neighborhoods become their own developers and attract the type of investment that downtown is, but in a different way. And really, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the city in of itself, is that these neighborhoods have been sustaining themselves. They've come up with creative alternative economies, figuring out how to kind of get things done and bring services to their communities, but we need to kind of support and help them capitalize on that even more.
Yeah, and I think we've got to get folks excited about the city of Detroit again. I mean, when you hear about all of the greatness and all these great things that's happening in downtown and midtown, and you look around the corner, you look across the street, you look outside your window, and you see the same stuff you saw 10 years ago, it really is a downer for people looking to try to stay in the city of Detroit. So for me, the goal is to make sure that we don't stop the progress that's happening in the city. That's very important. So when we look at the policies that we create, we've got to make sure that it is not prohibitive for this development to come. But we also have to look at how do we get our folks ready and prepared for these new jobs that are going to be available as a result of the construction. But then also, how do we get them inside of those buildings? Not just work on skilled trades, but also management and actually potentially owning some of that land themselves, either in downtown or within our neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm going to say something and ask you both to react to it. It's a criticism I hear sometimes of the council, but this council is completely under the thumb of Mayor Mike Duggan, that it's not independent enough, it's not adversarial enough, it's not sticking up for some of the issues that maybe he is ignoring. Is that true?
I think I have a track record.
I was going to say, I know it's not true for you.
Maybe not for me, but no, I mean, the mayor and I have definitely had contentious conversations and have butt heads many times and agreed to disagree in a respectful manner. There's still some fundamental things that we aren't on the same page on, but I have confidence that we can continue to grow and learn how to, come to some point of compromise. I would, at least speaking from my standpoint, I don't think there's always been a rubber stamp at the table. And even if a vote has gone maybe in a way that I didn't support, I think we've helped push the conversation forward to ask the tough questions and make sure that there's transparency and accountability. And I think moving forward, you'll see a lot more of that, given that things have kind of stabilized, and now we're really getting down into the trenches of looking at some systemic issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, the city of Detroit, we're kind of used to like the jousting, if you will, from the legislative branch and the executive branch. And if you don't see it, sometimes you don't believe that it's happening, the push and pull. So I think for me, it's been a very concerted effort to make sure that it's not that back and forth public bickering. We certainly have a difference of agreement behind closed doors. And there have been some times where, as a result of that, some of these issues or within the projects, proposals, and plans have changed and had some amendments. Sometimes they didn't, and that's the push and pull, the sausage making, if you will, of government. Sure. But I think because we're so conditioned to an extent to expect a fight, and if we don't see it, we don't think that it's exactly.
The city likes a good fight, right?
The city likes a good fight, but city likes success. And I think once we start seeing, residents start seeing more successes in the neighborhood, it helps more engagement and it helps more unity. So I don't think that we're in a situation where things are not happening in the neighborhood. It's just not happening as quickly and as tangible, if you will, if that's a word, people would like to see.
Yeah. James, I want to ask you, because this was your first term serving as a district representative. You had 4 years before that where everybody was elected at large. Talk about the differences in trying to represent essentially your neighborhood first, and then the areas around it, as opposed to the whole city.
Well, it's certainly different. And I always say it was an honor to be a part of the last at-large council and the first council by district. When you look at how you represent people, the expectation level was higher from a district standpoint. I know when we first went to districts, I was completely against it because it felt like it was outside forces. You know, this is after the Kilpatrick situation and Monica Conyers and all of that stuff. And people were just looking for change. I'm like, we don't have to change if we don't need to. But now being a district council member and seeing the other side, I love it so much more because it really gives you an opportunity to reach out and touch and really be responsible for a particular area. And it allows the residents to know who's responsible for their particular neighborhood. But what it does do, I think, unfairly, is it gives the expectation level that we have more power
you can fix things,
than
right?
we do. I mean, we're still legislators at the end of the day. You know, write laws and ordinances, approve contracts, approve the budget. That's what we do. But with the district concept, it gets you a lot closer. You get more complaints. You know who to go to. But the expectation level is that we have more power from an executive side. Yeah. And then you always have to go through a civics lesson with folks to explain to them why
what you can do,
you cannot get it done, but you still fight for it.
Yeah. Councilwoman, I'm going to talk to you or ask you about your district, which is in many ways the most diverse district in the city, not just culturally, racially, but also in terms of you have downtown, which is a businessy district. Then you have really different neighborhoods. How have you found the challenge of sort of representing all of those different people?
Sure. I think the District 6 success really will indicate the city's success in a larger level. But it is about managing the expectations of homeowners versus renters, the most polluted neighborhoods to some of the cleaner neighborhoods, again, the most wealthy and educated communities to some of the most impoverished neighborhoods. And I think, it's about meeting people where they're at, tailoring your services and delivery to those unique needs of each individual community. And that is not easy. And then it's kind of like, as Councilmember Tate mentioned, is just managing expectations and being very transparent and honest about what you can and can't do. But the District 6 really highlights, I think, that tension around gentrification, around who belongs, around the divisions between different racial groups and neighborhoods. And I'm honored to serve in this role. It is really exhausting at times. But I think if we're able to be successful in District 6, then you'll see that spread citywide.
Yeah. Quickly before we end, I want to ask you both about the marijuana ordinances that passed. Both of them passed on Election Day. Councilman Tate, I know you wrote the old ordinance, or it had a lot to do with that. Talked about your reaction to what we're dealing with now.
Not because it peels back something that I put in place, taking the personal stuff out of it, but it peels back a lot of the protections that we put in place within city government, within those particular ordinances. And I always talk about this one because it's the most plainly explainable example. They remove the boundaries away from a dispensary and a daycare center.
Right.
To me, that's like, why would you do that? You can tinker with all other things. Why that one? So I think it's going to be a challenge for us. I have a meeting with the law department this week to identify what our legal avenues are. There are other individuals outside of city government who are looking at legal ways to express their rights as well. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be real interesting, but I'm disappointed that we had to go this route, but here we are.
Kind of the same, and even under the previous legislation, a lot of them were kind of pushed into industrial areas, which District 6 has a higher concentration of industrial areas. Right. So there's already kind of an imbalance that we are seeing, but I think making sure people are educated, knowing what the law allows for, so they can be their own advocates and fight for their communities.
Yeah. Okay, thanks both of you for being here, and congratulations on the big wins last week.
Thank you for having us.
All right, throughout this election season, we have heard references to the so-called two Detroits. The downtown and midtown are thriving, while some city neighborhoods are still struggling with poverty and blight. We asked some residents if Detroit is a tale of two cities. Take a listen.
Tell me now, tell me what you need. Tell me now.
Yeah, I think it's a tale of two cities. This queue line, I think, is an example of that. Folks who are local to this area can have this source of transportation. But when you get outside of this area, what do we have?
Between here and like Boston Edison, most people would say, well, it doesn't feel safe just because there's not as much development or there's more abandoned buildings. Whether or not that's reality, a lot of people's perception defines what reality is.
We have become separated, black and white. And it's the separation that's there and nobody wants to talk about it. If we come together and talk about this, that's the first step to change, but we don't talk.
Business seems to be booming. They think there's a higher level of safety enforcement. I don't know. I think that's a perception.
There's nothing equal about us. You know, just because we got a home that we own or a car that we own, don't mean nothing. We can walk down the street, drink from the same water fountain. That don't mean that we equal.
I don't personally think that it's two different Detroits. I just think that people just need to really just get into the city and just really intermingle more than they are doing.
Once we figure out that we equal, then I think we can go way farther than what we're doing. But until then, Detroit gonna stay two different cities.
The condition of Detroit neighborhoods is one of the city issues explored this year by the media partners in the Detroit Journalism Cooperative. I'd like to welcome two DJC members, Chastity Pratt-Dawsey from Bridge Magazine and Keith Owens of the Michigan Chronicle. Thanks, both of you, for being here. Chastity, I want to start with you. You asked the mayor a really interesting question on election night. Based on his number, his winning percentage was 72% or something, but the turnout here was quite low. Something like 1 in 5 voters cast a ballot. And you asked the mayor whether you thought he had a mandate. And I thought that sort of lurking behind that question really is this question of who's benefiting here in Detroit. Are people really that excited about what's going on if they don't live in downtown or midtown?
Right, so he didn't answer the question.
He wouldn't answer your question
he refused to answer it. Essentially, it was an opportunity. I was trying to give him an opportunity to speak to the issue of low turnout and a little bit of the whole two Detroits thing, because let's just keep it real. In 2008, when Obama was on the ballot, 53% of Detroiters showed up. In 2012, 51% of Detroiters showed up. And when he was a write-in candidate in 2013, 31% showed up. Here we are in 2017, only 21% of people showed up. And I was hoping that he would speak to that because, the lurking question is, were people not excited to come to the polls to see Coleman A. Young II versus Mike Duggan? I'm sure that I was hoping that was a question his team was asking themselves, and I thought that he should maybe speak to it, but he didn't.
He seemed a little annoyed that you asked it too.
I understand looking back on it now. It was his happy moment, and I kind of
you were sort
bust
of
the
raining
bubble a
on
little
his
bit.
parade a little bit, right? Keith, the Michigan Chronicle also endorsed Mayor Duggan. Maybe a bit of surprise given the paper's history, but talk about how that equation of who's doing better to downtown versus the neighborhoods weighed into your decision.
I think that's exactly what weighed into it in terms of, I think overall, it's hard to argue that the city's not doing better. There are definitely places the neighborhoods have been a problem. I would also say that actually some of the issues that Coleman Young brought up were not invalid issues. It was just other problems, I believe, with his candidacy. But I believe that overall, what weighed into was the fact that I believe that it was not Coleman Young's time at this time. I think that he did things that just showed that he wasn't quite ready in our estimation. And I believe it also for Mayor Duggan, realizing the fact that there is dissatisfaction. I mean, that explains some of the low turnout. There wasn't a feeling that really had to jump out there, but some of that also, I believe, was a feeling of already knowing what was going to happen. And so, in the end, that's why we endorsed and we felt that he was the best of the two.
What are some of the things you think the mayor needs to do? I mean, I've seen the mayor out in neighborhoods. He gets out of the car and it's like Elvis is on the block. I mean, people are really excited no matter where he goes to see him. He did get 72% of the vote, but there is still that strain of folks who, if you spend any time in neighborhoods on a day-to-day basis, you see the things that are lacking. But are they things that are within his grasp? I mean, can he move the needle on those things the way he did downtown? Keith?
Well, I think some of the things where it's hard for him to move the needle, sometimes when you have perception, it's reality. I mean, for example, and he doesn't always help that. For example, when he came out and said that the two Detroit narrative, was a thing that we manufactured, that this was not a reality, that doesn't help. Because I think that people believe that that's not, that the two Detroits is a reality, that needs to be faced. And I think sometimes people view that as an unwillingness to really face the truth in terms of what's going on. And I think that also in terms of there have been things that have been accomplished that haven't necessarily been publicized as well as they should have and have been put out. There were things that were going on in the neighborhoods prior to now. I mean, this year, the rollout has been very public. I mean, the 127 million that's been invested, the other things that have gone on, but there were things that were going on before. It didn't just happen just this year. I mean, those things take time to get going, but people didn't necessarily know. And so I think that could be done better in terms of showing that type of commitment is there.
Show your work, right?
Yeah.
Chastity?
You know what? I think that there is very definitely an undercurrent of people who feel like, the Midtown Downtown 7.2 is getting a lot of investment, and they are holding him responsible for the neighborhoods. I mean, the definition of gentrification, we've seen it over and over again across the country, is the gentry. People with money come in and do things that will help them.
Right.
And people look to their local government to say, well, now you have to help me. I don't want to just see the improvements in the gentrified areas. And so, I mean, again, just keeping it real, Detroit became Detroit through what? Jobs, good paying jobs. And we don't have those anymore, which is why we have 99% of the problems that we have, correct? And so I think what people are hoping is not only that he does something for the neighborhoods, but does something to bring jobs. Maybe not Amazon, but somebody. We need jobs,
Right.
and they're hoping that he can do that. And you have a few incubator things going on, like with the school district and whatever. But people like myself, I'm going to be looking down the road for stories that show that some of these efforts are coming to scale.
That more people are getting to
More
participate.
people are participating in job training. More job opportunities are coming to the city, not just small incubator pilot programs.
Right.
If I could piggyback on what Chastity said, I think that's absolutely true. I think also what Detroit's looking at, we're looking not just jobs, but jobs that will help them to pay the rent and mortgage. We're not talking about McDonald's.
Right.
We're talking about we're talking about a city that basically before you could have a job, walk into a factory and buy a house. You know, have a second house, do well. And now you're not able to do that, understanding the times change, but we need to have jobs, but also to help people to maintain, where they are and to be able to not have to lose their homes. Half the problem is it's okay when you put up helping people to keep their homes and maintain their home, but you also have to give them resources to do that beyond. And it's going to require, preparation and jobs that pay enough wages for them to have a decent lifestyle.
Yeah. I want to ask about race, and which I think is the undercurrent of a lot of this conversation, that the folks who are benefiting in downtown and midtown are whiter and newer maybe to Detroit than other folks. The folks who are left behind in the neighborhoods are African American. I want you to talk about how real that issue is still in people's minds, but also whether you think there's something the mayor can do to address that head on and talk maybe more about race. Chastity?
I think that from what I can tell, being in the neighborhoods and covering the election, people didn't vote because they felt like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything in my life. Duggan's going to win. And, people who have money, white people who have money, are going to continue to get rich off of, LCA and things in downtown and midtown. That is very real. And what the mayor could do, and what we're all going to be watching to see if he does, is just not back away from it, not deny that there's two Detroits. When you say one Detroit for us all, that's only half of the conversation. The other half of the conversation is, I understand that you don't think we're here for you, but we are. Black people, brown people, everybody. He has to hit it head on, or people won't believe in him.
Yeah, Keith?
I'm the same thing. I believe that, at Mackinac, he got a lot of traction, or a lot of publicity, at least.
When he
talked about it directly. And I think that, and that was great, but also you look at the audience. You talk about rich, wealthy white audience who obviously need to hear that, had not heard that before, but you cannot make one good, well-publicized statement, and then that's it. And I think that what's happening is this is something that needs to be continued, and you need to realize that this is an ongoing. The history. The devil. He illustrated that time a depth of understanding people didn't realize that he had. Of the history of that. But I think but that needs to be continued. And I think that if people understand that what this is really about, and that nobody expects him to bridge the gap of racism, everybody singing, hand in hand and kumbaya. That's not going to happen.
Right, but don't act like it's not there.
Like it's not there. There's no true Detroit. Everybody. I got the majority of the votes, so that means everybody loves me. That's not the case.
Yeah, people don't really.
He's still a white mayor of a black city. We still live in a very segregated area, and let's have legitimate, honest conversation about that.
Yeah. All right, Chastity Pratt Dawsey and Keith Owens, thanks very much for being here. All right, that's going to do it for our special edition of American Black Journal. Our thanks to the Detroit Historical Society and to our audience members. For more information about our guests, go to AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
American Black Journal on the Road is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.